So, you know, that is the story. And it's the first time we're doing this to LinkedIn Live, so that should be fun. So if you're joining us on LinkedIn Live, welcome. It's good to see you. I'm Scott Shute. I lead our mindfulness compassion programs, and we do this wisdom speaker series about once a month where we bring in luminaries from outside of LinkedIn to talk about all things wisdom. And today I'm super pleased to have us be joined by Emma Lawrence. Emma is a certified professional coach. She's a millennial ally. She specializes in breaking the cycle around burnout. And she has a really extensive and interesting background, which we're going to get into. But first of all, welcome, Emma. Thank you for joining.
Thank you, Scott. So delighted to be here.
Awesome. Okay, so let's do this. So I know that I was reading about your background and we talked a little bit, and you've been an actress, you've been an educator, you've been a singer-songwriter, you've been a writer, you've been a spiritual seeker and spiritual aid, and now you're a coach. That you are like a true Renaissance woman.
Oh, thank you. It's like I thought you were going to say what? All in one lifetime. Mm-hmm.
No, I love it. And so what about, maybe we'll get into each one of those, but what about each one of those different experiences leads you here? Like, what was important about each one of those things?
Yeah. Definitely in acting, the important part was learning about the human psyche, the human experience. And I think one of the reasons I left acting actually was that I got tired of like layering the character. And any of you who've done theater work know how that can be. But it really helped me understand how we work as human beings emotionally, mentally, physically. It helped me study that. And that's definitely one thing I bring to coaching now, is my fascination with us as human beings.
Actually, yeah, let's go back even further. So since you did all those things, I'm always interested in a person's journey, right? So when you were, 17, 18, trying to figure out who you were in life and where you were standing on the doorstep of adulthood, what did you have in mind? And could you have guessed that you'd get here? Yeah.
Could not have guessed. When I left for college, I was so happy to be leaving home. That really was the thing, And I had in mind, I would be teaching languages. I had been studying French and Spanish in high school. I went to a college that specifically had programs abroad, and that was my intention. And I got to college and everything changed. And yes, has education been a part of my journey? Absolutely, yes. But I did not teach languages, and I only know, solamente un poquito de español now, and un peu de français, and that's that's it.
Well, at least you have those things.
I have those.
So now if you travel, you can order dinner or whatever.
When you have a great accent. When I was in Paris, I have a good French accent, and so I would ask a question like directions somewhere, and someone would rattle back off to me very quickly. Of course, Parisians speak quickly anyway, but it'd rattle back up, and I'd be like, je ne comprends pas.
You just got past
répéter? Yeah. Lentement, s'il vous plaît. Slowly, please. But
yeah. Well, so today we're talking about burnout and both overcoming burnout, but also reclaiming our joy. And so I love the refocusing here. I think that we're all so excited to leave 2020 behind.
Yes.
With all of the fires in California, with COVID, with the election, with the social and racial injustice, and just like it just feels like the world has been a lot, right? And so we turn the calendar only to find there's more of the same, right? And maybe there's a little more hope than we had, but it's still there. So in a world that's so divided, in a world where there's so much, suffering, at least what we see on TV, is joy possible?
Oh, 100%, yes. And it's actually happening every day. And it's happening in our lives every day. How much attention do we put on it? And how much are we looking for it? And how much are we really taking our attention there rather than getting sucked into a lot of fear and divisiveness, as you say.
Yeah. Well, let's pick it apart, maybe tease it
Sure.
apart. So,
Yeah.
what do you think? I mean, it may seem obvious, but we're going to go deep here. Like,
Yeah.
what are the factors that get us to burnout?
Yeah. There are a lot of different factors. But here, you were talking about turning the page on 2021, and the fact is that there's never been a time in our history where we've had to be more of a guardian of our own peace of mind, more of a protector of our own hearts, our own consciousness, if you will.
Mm,
And it really is showing us that it's always a choice. It's always a choice. Now, that's easy to say, but the things that contribute to burnout externally, and I can talk about externally and internally, okay? Externally is a lot of chaos in the world, a lot of, how can I say this? I'm thinking about people thinking about ourselves as separate from somehow the whole community.
mm,
So, for example, if I choose not to wear a mask, am I affecting someone miles away from me? I might say, well, I'm affecting people in my immediate area, but maybe miles away from me. So, where's the connection between ourselves and self responsibility and our community? Does that make sense?
yeah. And so let's see.
Yeah.
You're talking about external factors. We have the kind of the chaos of external
Yes.
factors. Um, and then there's
The
the
chaos of the worldly situation. Mhm.
yes. And
Yeah, the chaos of the worldly
we
situation and economics and social pressures and all this kind of thing. And I can speak to that very specifically with millennials because that's what I've been studying. And that is the financial pressures of the student loans and the social pressures of feeling like they have to look perfect on social media
mhm,
and document their lives in this certain lovely way, or feeling like, gosh, I want to serve the world, but I feel like I can't even get my own life together, let alone, you know, contribute somehow.
mhm. So there's these external factors, and then I think those are easier to see, right? Right. We have,
Yeah.
and some people are more affected by today's world than others. Some people are totally thriving in today's world. Some people are struggling. And then there's the internal factors, which are maybe harder to see. So, what are some of those internal factors that either cause burnout or allow us to move beyond it?
Yeah. One of the main things is that sense that what's outside of us is somehow more powerful than what's inside of us.
Hmm.
So, one of my strongest messages has been there's nothing outside of you that's more powerful than what's inside you.
Hmm.
You have creativity, grit, intelligence, imagination, heart, vision, all of these things, all of these tools. And you may have used them at different times in your life, but now they're being called upon very strongly.
Hmm.
So it's a choice again.
So, it's a choice to say, yes, I'm not burying my head in the sand. I see all this stuff
Correct.
that's happening outside. And I'm choosing to say that what's inside is more powerful.
Correct. That's
Mm,
correct. Yes,
right.
exactly.
That's almost just a switch. It's almost just
It's a
I'm
paradigm
choosing.
shift.
I'm choosing to do it.
Yes, it's a paradigm shift. And then comes exploration of how do I do that? How do I harness or bring together everything inside me to this moment
Yeah.
and still have a vision of beauty for my life and peace for my life and joy for my life?
Sure.
And how do I get to that vision?
So if you find someone who is feeling whatever the words, overwhelmed, burned out,
Yes.
done, crispy,
Yes.
whatever.
Crispy fried. Yeah.
Crispy fried. That enough joy. No, not real joy.
Yeah.
Where do you start with them?
I start with joy. Mentioning joy, I do. Yeah, I start with them with joy. It's so individual. Each person, and that kind of goes back to the acting, each character, each person is so individual and so precious. And it needs to be, with coaching, it needs to be, for me, an individual, a kind of a one-on-one, even when it's in a small group coaching. But there are some things that work every time. And number one is joy. And the reason that joy works and reclaiming or reconnecting with our joy works is that joy is a slower burning fuel.
Hmm.
Joy is fuel for what you truly want your life to be. It's not that kind of blazing fire that can burn you up, which is part of how we get to burnout, right? Is that we're going full force toward, this is very cultural. It's very cultural in America to go full force directly toward whatever it is that your goal is. And if you're not doing that, why aren't you doing that? And,
Yeah.
So, but that's the kind of fire that burns people up. It's short-term fuel, it's not long-term fuel. In rocket science, there's the burnout, right? The burnout is when a rocket is launched and it reaches that place in orbit where it's going to go beyond the orbit, it has to drop that fuel container that carried it up to that point. So burnout is not necessarily a bad thing. It might have gotten you where you are, like you're not a failure because you're burnt out. It's just you needed to get to a certain place. Okay, so now you're at that place. Now you can leave the orbit to go to where you really want to go, but you got to jettison that empty container, which is that burnout, the habits of burnout, if you will.
Cool. Well, let's start talking about the recipe a little bit, right?
Sure.
So I get that what got me here may not get me to the next place, right?
That's right.
I'm going to let go of this empty shell that got me from, to the first level of space.
Yep.
What are those things I'm letting go of?
Oh, gosh. Okay. So again, any sense that what's outside you that is more powerful than you is the first thing. The second thing that you're looking at is your pace. Most burnout happens when people are trying to, in a sense, outpace themselves. It's like we all have a natural rhythm. And if you try to push or go faster than that natural rhythm, life is going to tell you, can't do it.
Yeah.
Pace is really important. Rhythm is really important. Knowing your own rhythm is really important. And when you talk about recipe in terms of rhythm, I have been studying different rhythms, how people work with life, and how that linear approach that I just talked about, where, okay, I've got my goal and I'm going direct for it and I don't care what's in my way and I'm going to, plow through whatever obstacles because that's what a good soldier does or whatever, not everybody is linear. Linear is a great approach if you're taking out your trash. For example, you got to bring your trash from the garage or wherever you are, to the corner. Okay, but you may feel like you're going toward a goal, but you're going 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And you may say to yourself, oh my gosh, I'm such a failure. I can't reach my goal. But you're not a failure. You just may not be a linear rhythm person.
So we drop things, including being aware of our pace and our rhythm.
Yes.
And then when we think about joy, I mean, sometimes joy is the hardest thing to think about when we're feeling so crispy or burned out, right? So where do we start?
Yeah. By considering what has brought you joy in the past. And I'll tell you that I'll give you just some examples. And it's one of the first questions I ask people is what do you love? What do you love? What do you love to do? And it's surfing or rock climbing or painting or music
Yeah.
or connecting with friends or cooking
Yeah.
or, and, you know, and I ask, well, is that something that's in your life now? And of course, almost always the answer is no, or it's just not in that person's life quite enough to support them.
Mm.
So, okay, can you find just 5 minutes today
Yeah.
to pick up the guitar, to
Yeah.
pick up the paintbrush, to go out walking in the woods, to write a poem, to play with your dog,
Yeah.
you know?
Actually, I want to make this real for people. We have, 130 people here on Zoom. We have more on LinkedIn Live. Put in the chat, what is one thing that sparks joy for you? Right? Because then everything we talk about can be framed for
Absolutely.
you around that one thing. So if we were all in the room, you could tell us, here we go. Yeah, let's see
Yeah,
it.
community, yoga, writing. Here we
Yeah.
go.
Dance,
My
my puppy,
puppy. I can
playing
sing
singing.
tennis, Pilates, working out, playing
Yeah,
piano, cooking brother. I
cooking.
love it. I love it. I love it.
You
I
guys know.
love it. Cats. I love the kids
Yeah.
being outdoors, being outside. Beautiful.
And a lot of
So
these things, I think we find
yeah.
would be common themes, right?
Yes.
It's
Yes.
either something with reconnecting in nature.
Yep. It's a
It's
big one.
some expression of my creativity, whether it's
Yes.
cooking or guitar or whatever. It's connecting with loved ones, whether it's a puppy or a spouse or children or whatever.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. A lot of those are the themes of it.
Okay, so let's rewind then. So thinking about for each of you, the thing you've put in there. And Emma, what I heard you say is like, can you just take 5 minutes?
Yeah.
Can you just, reclaim that part and reignite it?
Yes.
So it doesn't have to be
No.
a big thing.
No, it needs to be consistent, Scott. It's the
Mm,
consistency. It's not, it really isn't the amount of time, it's the consistency. Because if you're consistent, the amount of time will increase naturally on its own.
mm,
It will.
yeah, that's nice.
Yeah.
Okay, so is it as simple as that? Right. So what I heard so far is like, first I'm going to make a choice, and the choice
Yep.
is what's inside me is bigger than what's
Yep.
going on outside of me.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And two is I'm kind of gonna, like a lighthouse, I'm redirecting my attention
Yes.
to something that gives me joy.
Yes.
Is that it?
Yes.
What
Yeah.
else?
There you go.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, it's pretty good. It depends on what you want. Once you have reclaimed yourself and your own freedom of choice, then it depends on what you want.
Hmm.
Again, pace factors in. When you begin to do what you enjoy consistently, your pace is going to shift. It's going to shift because you're bringing in a different energy to your life, an energy that is not burnt out, an energy that is sustaining you. This is sustainability. This is long-term sustainability. And then the step that's next is the inner guidance step.
Hmm.
To find a way to get quiet enough to hear your own inner voice.
Hmm.
That's what I've found is essential
Hmm.
to shifting to wherever you want to be from this burnout place into where you want to be.
It's almost like a surrender, a
Great word for it.
surrender and then a listening. Is this, I see Sudha asked a really good question, which
Yeah.
I'll interject here. Is
Yeah.
there an intermediate step of around accepting where you are,
Absolutely.
before, then being able to move on to this place of joy?
Absolutely, yes. I was talking with someone a couple of weeks ago who does a 12-step program. And she shared with me that in 12-step, there's awareness and then acceptance and then action.
Mm,
So it's, oh, I see myself, burnt out.
Mm-hmm.
Great, Yes, the self-acceptance, and this, I think, Scott, ties into the work that you do too with compassion.
Mm-hmm.
It's key to have that self-compassion and self-acceptance, to be able to allow the shift to take place. But if your whole self isn't accepting, it's not a perfectionist thing. You can just say, okay, I'm accepting as much as I can. Accepting acceptance,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Sure.
and keep connecting.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know for some people, this first step of the switch, right, that says the inside is bigger than the
It's
outside
more
is a
powerful.
challenge.
Okay.
And sometimes one of the challenges is kind of this is not exactly it, but that feeling of survivor's guilt. Like people
Mm.
around me are suffering,
Oh,
whether it's my family members or other members of the community, the world community.
right.
And so for me to just go have joy can feel a little like I'm escaping the big world.
Mm.
How do you think about that and what our role and joy is in the broader context of, the community or other things going on?
Well, I think all of us have experienced that when we're taking good care of ourselves, we're in a better place to care for others.
Yeah.
So the joy as fuel becomes a way to get a little bit of distance. It's not don't empathize. Oh my gosh. I mean, compassion is key in our world and in ourselves. It's just getting some breathing room so that we can be better available to serve in the ways that are needed. Uh, I had a friend once who said, back when I was having a really hard time, she said to me, Emma, I don't know if I should join you in your suffering or if I should stay where I am and just hold the space for you to be able to
Yeah.
rise up, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's right. I think there's a story I believe the Buddha told about empathy, right? And not that this happens in today's world, but you see a person who's been trapped by a rock, right? The rock has fallen on them and they're in pain. Well, if you're empathetic, you feel that same pain. And if you're really empathetic, you feel it at the same level they do, to the point where you can't do anything. Right? Where compassion is, I see the other person, I have some appreciation for what they're going through, but I myself can remain strong so I can help.
Yes.
And I think joy is this shift is really
Yes.
powerful for us to be able to rise above and be able to serve life instead of kind of getting
Yes.
sucked into it.
Exactly. Exactly. Instead of
Um,
being under the rock. Yeah.
Instead of being under the rock.
Yeah.
Shannon asked a really good question to
Yeah.
tease this thread out. So for some people, this idea of burnout and exhaustion is totally debilitating. And even the ask of finding joy seems daunting.
Mm.
So what do you say to the people who
Mm.
struggle even to get to this point of
Mm.
thinking about it?
I don't say anything, I listen to them.
Mm,
If someone is that exhausted and that overwhelmed or anxious or depressed or panicked, I see these things all the time.
mm,
And that is the thing about coaching. I mean, we're talking here today, so I'm talking, but I spend most of my time listening
mm,
because inside of each person are the answers. The answers are right here, they really are. But if you can't be fully heard for where you're at, how are you going to have the space to even see those answers or like we said, to connect with the joy?
mhm.
I'd listen.
Yeah. Dr. Tumas is joining us from the UK. Hi, Dr. Tumas. He says, do you have any more specific advice for healthcare workers, nurses, doctors who are excessively stretched now,
Oh,
emotionally and physically?
oh,
He says, today in the UK, we had the all-time highest numbers of deaths due to the pandemic.
oh my goodness, my goodness, my goodness. My heart, uh, my heart goes out to you. I've thought so much about the healthcare workers' time. And it is so difficult day in and day out to find, how can I fill myself with love, with compassion, with grace, and go back in to the situation. These are the situations that I believe force us to surrender to something higher than ourselves. And I don't care what people call it. It just, whatever spiritual teaching that is followed, it's higher love. It's life, tuning into how life, even in the smallest ways, is supporting us every single moment. I know in my darkest time, and where my business was born was in a very dark time, because I had nothing left. And what I saw in that moment was that life stepped in to support me in all these little ways. I would connect with a stranger, or I'd go to the store and what I needed was on sale because I was stretched financially. I had people who, like the telephone, let's say I set up my internet, right? And I was really struggling, and the person would go out of their way to find me the best possible deal and to help. And the person who came to my house was the nicest man in the world. I mean, there were just all of these ways that life, these little ways that life was saying, I'm here, I'm supporting you, and yes, you can do this another day. I also think that inner strength, however we do it, pray, meditate, contemplate, whatever, going to that source within.
You talked about, this switch that flips to say, whatever's happening outside, I know I'm stronger within.
Yeah.
And we talked about, developing that sense of inner listening, or that connecting to that deeper part of ourselves. And somebody asked the question earlier, like, how do we cultivate that practice? How do we learn to listen to ourselves better? And I'm wondering, we can talk about it, or I'd love for you to lead a practice if you're open to it, of 8 or so minutes.
Sure.
Because talking is good, but doing is even better.
Absolutely. I will say, Scott, that with the people that I've worked with, those who have created for themselves a different morning practice have found the rest of the day to be easier and to come into a different alignment. That's what I can say from the people that I've worked with. And again,
that's
it
my
doesn't.
own experience as well.
Yeah.
Of starting the day with a practice. It's such, for me personally, it's such a stabilizing force for whatever happens next.
Yeah.
So sorry, cut you off.
No, that's fine. You didn't. That's it. It just helps the whole. Also, I know many people have been served by, before they go to sleep at night, to just reconnect with peace, ask for help. In other words, to be willing to have a dream experience that might support them. I know sleep is difficult for a lot of people. So how can we bring ourselves to a peaceful place before we go to sleep? So that's another time that we can connect.
And do you have a recommendation for a specific exercise? Would you like to share an exercise with us now?
Yeah, sure. I'd be happy to. You want me to lead
Yeah.
us through? Okay. So I'll tell you, when I work with groups and lead exercises, since every person has their own individual experience, I like to use what I would call minimal cues. So helping people kind of get into a relaxed state and then go into a visualization. But then there's this point at which you have a choice of where to go. So I try to lead people for part of the way, and then to say, okay, from here on, choose. So I would ask you to think about, before we begin, just consider for yourself and let it come to you, maybe, what's a joyful place that you like to be? A joyful place. Is it the ocean? Do you miss the ocean? where the waves come crashing in and the sandpipers are running, it looks like they're trying to not get their little feet wet, on the sand, or dogs might be running on the beach, or a beautiful blue sky and breeze in the salty air, Or are you a top of the mountain person where you want to look out over that vista and see the mountains in the distance and the landscape, see the eagles circling around and feel that expansiveness and freedom? Are you someone who loves a forest where you can smell the pine trees and hear them crunch under your feet and see the light, the dappled light come in through the trees? Are you someone who loves your garden with all the fragrances of the flowers and the earth in your hands and maybe a fountain? So you can go anywhere you'd like to go. And as we just sink in to whatever place it is that is our joy, you might take a moment to let your shoulders kind of drop down and take a breath. And if your tongue is kind of stuck to the roof of your mouth, to let that drop down behind your bottom teeth. To let your body be heavy and focus your attention on the inner screen of imagination. Allow yourself to walk down a country road. Maybe there's a pasture with beautiful horses on one side, magnificent beings. Maybe there's a meadow of wildflowers on the other side. And as you walk, you see a gate ahead of you. And when you unlatch that gate, you walk into your most joyful place. What is it that you see? What is it that you hear? What can you touch? What does it smell like? Is there something there for you to taste? And as you explore this joyful place, would you like to invite someone to join you there? A loved one? A pet? In the distance, see someone walking toward you. When you see this being, your heart is immediately open, as if you've known them all your life. This person is smiling and so happy to see you. And he or she brings a gift. The gift is handed to you. Take a look at it. Is it part of this natural world you're in? A joyful landscape? Is it something you've never seen before? What form does it have? Or color? It's your gift. You can take this gift and hold it to your heart, or tuck it in your pocket, and express any gratitude you feel. For this is what will remind you of your joyful landscape. And as you turn to walk back toward the gate where you came in, you can feel this expansiveness, this happiness, this gratitude for the time spent in joy, in peace. Walk back through the gate, onto the country road, where you may see that pasture with the beautiful horses, or the meadow of wildflowers. And slowly, ever so slowly, return to this time and this place and this breath. Let your body breathe a little more deeply. Maybe move your fingers, your toes. Roll your shoulders a little bit. Maybe let your eyes open and your gaze just be soft. As you gradually come back to the here and now.
That's great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Scott. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to add that that's an exercise of visualization. So it's kind of working with the light, if you will. Some people enjoy working with sound. And the word hue is a word that I've used. I think you have too, Scott. And it's a sound that can also help you to heal or travel in your imagination.
Mm-hmm. Super powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Yeah, about 2/3 of the way through, I realized that I needed kind of myself back out of my vision because I was going to be gone and not be of any further use for this show. So that was fantastic.
Oh, thank you for coming back.
Yeah. All right, you guys. What questions do you have for Emma? We'll open it up here in the chat here in Zoom. And if somebody's minding the LinkedIn Live, if there's chat there, if Shannon or Chris, if you could let me know what's going on there, that would be great. And while we're waiting for our friends, let's see. I know that one of the things, well, actually, my question is, what if we're able to get joy for ourselves, but we see other people, still struggling? How can we be an ally?
I believe the best way is to listen first. And that might be listening to the person talk, but it also might be just paying attention to what they need. Maybe it's something as simple as helping to shovel the driveway or, bringing food. But listening either to them as they pour out how they feel or to life, to say to life, I'd like to support this person. Can you show me how? That opportunity will come.
Nice. Yeah, I like this. It starts with this belief, kind of you started with this switch, right? This belief
Paradigm shift.
that I'm powerful inside. The answers are inside. It's more powerful than the outside stuff. And that includes this idea that I can find the answer to that question. Right?
Yes.
And so just simply getting quiet and asking and listening and believing that the answer is going to come, I think is incredibly powerful. Yeah. Sudha has a good question here. Pleasure can be a very seductive distractor from joy.
Correct.
And how do you know the difference between the two?
Gosh, that's beautiful. What a great question. Joy is for me, I would say joy is the permanent fulfillment, whereas pleasure is always temporary.
Yeah. And then, so it starts with awareness, right? Awareness of maybe I'm binging on the news to find out what's going on in whatever in Washington. And that's hitting some sort of dopamine cycle in my brain, but that's not joy, right?
No.
So recognizing it first.
Right. What's lasting?
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about. What's permanent, what's lasting?
Yeah. Jen has a good question here. What thoughts do you have regarding a culture of overwork as, sometimes it's a badge of honor?
Yes.
Like,
yes.
I stayed up really late last night or whatever. We start in college. I pulled it all night.
Yeah. We do. Yeah.
So,
thoughts about that culture?
Yeah, the idea of it, right? Of wearing overwork as a badge of honor.
Yes.
Right? And that could be applied to anybody's culture or anything. Like I think we're sometimes like somebody asks, I used to fall into this trap. Somebody would ask me how I'm doing. I'm like, oh, I'm really busy. And it just became my identity.
Your thing. Exactly.
So miserable.
So why would busyness be a badge of honor? To me, this ties into the self-worth issue, that we all have. What makes us valuable? If we feel that what makes us valuable is achievement or usefulness, I grew up definitely with that. Achievement and usefulness means I'm of value. Otherwise, I'm not. Which is a lie. So I think the overwork thing is is partly that, the self-worth.
Mm,
And in what do we gain our self-worth? Is it possible for us to know that we, by virtue of being alive, are worthy? By virtue of being alive, not having to do anything to earn that basic worthiness.
mm. Yeah. Again, it's part of that choice and awareness. Um, Christine asks, how can you change your behavior related to burnout without changing your role? So it sounds like there's almost an assumption that we have these roles. We can't all quit our jobs and, you know, live in that world of bliss, but how do we change our behaviors?
So if I understand the question correctly, like you're saying, Scott, how do we change? How do we get beyond burnout and still kind of go to work every day and fulfill our responsibilities and that kind of thing? Is that,
Yeah,
do I
there's a,
understand the question
let's see if I
correctly?
get
Or
this
if there's
right.
a follow-up, yeah.
How can you stay clear of the same traps within a role? It seems such
Ah,
so more challenging than just starting over. So in other
yeah.
words,
Go ahead. In other words,
I'll try to rephrase, and if I've got it wrong, please let me know. But I think in life we fall into these patterns. It could be a
yes,
pattern of the role that we're in, or a
yes,
relationship that we're in, or just the patterns that have been built up over all of our years.
yes,
And there's something about the act of changing where we almost crave a fresh start. Like, wow, if I could
yeah,
just wipe the slate clean, I could start
right,
over so much easier.
right,
But
right.
oftentimes we have these set patterns that aren't quite done yet that we can need to continue to live in, whether it's a role or a marriage or a whatever. And so how do we, without having to change all the structure of our life, how do we start changing
Yes.
our behavior that is in it?
Yes, okay. So identifying the behavior, like you said, the awareness of it. Now, this is a beautiful thing, okay? Because this is where the rubber meets the road. This is really where the rubber meets the road. If you're aware of behavior that's not working for you, no, you don't have to wipe everything away and just and start over. I was talking with somebody who said, I move every 18 months. Why am I moving every 18 months? And it was this thing about like, getting agitated after living somewhere for a year and then starting to create something new, start to create something new. No, that it doesn't have to be that way. Um, Once you're aware of what that self-defeating behavior is really, you can open up to that the solution that's presenting itself now and do it one day at a time, one incident at a time. That's where the real growth happens, when you can persist. Again, it's the frequency of it that changes things, and
Yeah.
then the outer stuff, the bigger stuff can change.
And it kind of fits to, I'm seeing a note from Dr. Tumas here about sometimes it's just the pressure of the outside world. So
Yes,
he's saying,
yes,
burnout's often a question about your workplace or leadership culture,
yes,
and not just your people. There's almost always an element of unfair treatment or unmanageable workload,
yes,
or lack of clarity, etc.
yes, yes,
You could
yes,
take the same thing to say about any outside force, right?
yes, that's right.
And all of this, it seems to me what you're saying is it starts with a choice. We may not be able to change our workplace or
Right.
our
Yep.
culture that we live in or the culture we work in, but we can change us.
Yes. And when we change us, Scott, when we change us, we will be changing
Yeah.
the whole.
Yes.
Absolutely,
Cool.
yes. Yes.
All right. Lots of people are having the same thoughts here in the chat. I'm just
Yeah, yeah,
um, very cool.
yeah. It's this thing about that is the hard part, which is the self-responsibility.
Mm,
And I get it, because there is that sense of this is unfair, or I've been betrayed, or this is an impossible situation. And I'm not saying that's not true. I'm saying that ultimately, that's a gift for us to see where our strength lies.
mm,
It's a challenge to us to see what we're made of. We
mm,
are made of such greatness that sometimes we only see. when we are really up against the wall. You
I
know
think
that
this is,
quote
go,
from
please go ahead.
that quote from Eleanor Roosevelt, uh, that a woman only knows how strong a woman is like a tea bag. She only knows her strength when she's in hot water.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know?
And for me, this feels like the summary of 2020, of, or whatever it is we're going through. Um, because if you look at the outer situation, this is not something that any of us would have chosen. But I see the changes that are happening within people, right? The kind of the trial by fire. They're becoming stronger. They're turning within. They're kind of throwing their hands up and going, okay, what I was doing doesn't work anymore. I give up.
Yep.
And then they become, we have a little bit more humility to ask, okay, well, what else is there? I need help. And so it's this witnessing to our own greatness and saying, I can't. I have to give up. I can't control what's outside. And so now it's this realization that I can try to control what's inside.
Absolutely. And it's and even more than controlling really what's inside, it's how do I move with life differently?
Yeah.
How do I move with life differently? How can I begin to accept that there is a benevolent force in the universe that is supporting me to grow and to be joyful and to expand and to see my strength? That's the life is coaching you
Yeah.
thing.
And I think even if that's not someone's worldview, right?
Yep.
That there is a benevolent force, that life is happening for me instead of to me. I
Yep.
think it's super powerful to take that attitude, right?
Yeah.
Even if you don't believe in the structure, there's a power to taking that attitude.
Well said.
Yeah.
Very well said.
Cool. All right, guys. What other questions do you have here for Emma? If they don't have another one, I have one. So, what do you think the role of self-compassion is in this whole work?
Essential. Someone was asking earlier, the doctor in the UK asking about healthcare workers and so on. And honest to God, I get this image of at night, just lying down and being compassionate with yourself. So if you're having a hard time, no matter what it is, to be able to give yourself the gift of saying, this is really hard. And to give yourself that love. I think it's essential. Literally.
Yeah.
Essence. Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, I think that we have gotten to a nice place here, and so let me just recap the things that struck home, and maybe you guys can recap in the chat, what was your favorite thing you took away? But if I think about the arc of what we talked about, it's first making a choice that the stuff inside of me is more powerful than the world around me. Like, I have that choice. I can tap into my joy, and the joy is a slower burning fuel. It's the stuff that lasts beyond things like pleasure. And I can do this by just tapping into something that I love just a few minutes every day. And there's something about just a few minutes which will cause that to, grow and be a bigger part of my life every day. I can be more in tune with the pace of life and think about the rhythm of what is happening. And ultimately learn to tap into that inner voice within me. And we did a super creative exercise, a visualization I think we'd all benefit from doing, beginning the day, end of the day, anytime, to kind of tap into that happy place within us and continue to go there. So
Beautifully said. My goodness, you're good at that.
Well, thank you, Emma, for your gracious
welcome.
time today. I appreciate it. And thanks to everyone who's joined us
Thank you,
here
everybody.
on Zoom or on LinkedIn Live. It's been great to see you. And feel free to reach out to either Emma or myself on LinkedIn if you have any further questions. And we'll see you next time.
Okay.
All right, you guys. Thanks
Thank
very
you,
much.
Scott. Thank you.
All right. Take care, you guys. Have a great rest of your day.